Good evening, everybody. It's 6:30 p.m., Tuesday, July 16th, 2019, and it's a regular going to say the pledge if you'd like to join us. And Pete, careful. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Incoming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
You here?
Are you here, John? Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattard is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our Township Attorney, Roger Zappa, our Township Fire Chief, Dan Shanahan, is here, and our Assistant Fire Chief, Rob Cochran.
Thanks, Randy. Forgot to remind everybody to turn on their microphones and turn off your cell phones, please, or turn them down. Next up is public comment. We will have a public hearing. If there's anything for the public hearing, we like to save it for then, but if there's anything else anybody would like to comment on now, you can do so. If not, we will proceed to board member comment and response, which we don't have. So tonight's consent agenda consists of approval of regular meeting minutes of July 2nd and work session minutes of July 8th, 2019. Bills payable in the amount of $137,002.41. Budget amendment tonight, 2019-05, which we will read later. Receive committee and other reports, Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority, agenda for June 26th, minutes of their May 29th meeting, balance sheet, profit and loss statement of May, Carp River Kiln fundraising information, and a letter to the Michigan DNR regarding damage on the trails, and a copy of 2 letters regarding the Pure Michigan designation. Recreation Committee agenda for July 16th, the Planning Commission minutes of June 26th, Fire Department activity report, and the Sheriff's Department activity report from June, financial statements from June, and the Treasurer's report from June. Just need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
It's a roll
Aye.
call.
Oh, yes.
Roll call.
I was going to remember that. Have it.
On the budget amendment, it's it's 2019-05. The authorization is requested to increase expenditures in the capital department by $3,000. Lions Field lighting was in the original budget for $4,500. That will not be done this year. However, the fence replacement is being done instead at a higher cost. The offset will come from the fund balance, and that's a $3,000 change. And roll call vote is Trustee Marks.
First, yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattard is yes. And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any declaration of conflicts of interest? I didn't receive any, so I'm thinking we're okay there. We need approval of the remainder of the agenda
Public hearing.
before approving the agenda?
Yep. I think it is.
No.
Or is it not? I have it on mine. Oh, okay, no, I don't. It's right after that.
Okay. I'd like to make one change. We do have consideration for increasing the fire department special assessment at the end of the agenda, so I'd like to move it up, which would probably be 6A, to have it right after the public hearing, so the public doesn't have to wait if they want to comment.
6D to 6A.
Correct.
I'll move to accept the agenda as amended.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So
That was 10D to 6A, right?
6D, 10D to,
to 6A. Okay. All right. So, we can open the public hearing tonight. This is for Fire Department Service Expansion Special Assessment, and I will open it at 6:35 PM. This is an opportunity for the public to speak out on a recommendation that the board is making. And then, like I said, because of the agenda change, we can have board member comment discussion right after that. So if there's anybody that would like to address the public, actually, in addition to the board, we do have one request for a reading. We can do that at the end, if it doesn't matter, whenever.
Dan Pompo, 2422 Cherry Street. I'd like to take this time to register my objection on increasing the special assessment millage for 2 additional firefighter EMTs. I'm sure, as you know, I was not in favor of supporting the ambulance to start with. Specific reasons were the non-need of having it due to UP Health Systems already supplying this service to the township. Also, the unit was going to be classified as a transporting basic life support system. Due to this classification, we could not transport an advanced life support patient without a qualified paramedic on board, which meant we would have to wait until the advanced life support rig arrived and transfer a paramedic with his supplies to our rig. In addition, we must reimburse UP Health Systems $250 for each call that one of their individuals goes on our rig. At the time, this seemed like a waste of our resources and money. Today is no different, with the exception that UP Health Systems has now moved and response time for the ambulance has greatly improved. The board decided that they would review the ambulance after 1 year to see if this was still a feasibility. From the fact that you want to increase millage because you can't provide coverage on a volunteer basis should be a pretty good example of the fact that it is not working. It would be evident there is not enough EMTs to make this work, and increasing our millage to fix this doesn't make sense. Right now, we're paying 2.5 mils for Public Act 33, 0.25 mils for equipment purchase, and not to mention the 0.25 mils we paid for the ambulance. And now you want to increase 0.3 mils for additional 2 full-time fire department EMTs. That's over 3 mils for a volunteer department. I find it interesting that the KBIC gave the department $27,500, and their plan on using this money was to replace boots, as their current ones are in bad shape. Where do the priorities lie in this department? We were, after all, established as a fire department, not an EMS system. It is very evident to me that this ambulance is not working out and should be discontinued. If you look back on the way it was designed, the medical part for the fire department was designed, the department had approximately 17 medical first responders and EMTs that responded and are equipped rigs to stabilize the patient until the hospital rig arrived. We only respond to life-threatening cases, not every EMS call. This worked fine until someone decided that we needed to change. The current situation only leads to what Chief Shanahan described as burnout. With the possibility of another dark store problems on the horizon, which would threaten a reduction in the tax money, making the move to increase millage is not a prudent decision to the taxpayers of the township. In conclusion, I would like to ask that one question, that whenever increases in water or wastewater rates or additional millage is discussed, you stop saying it's only a minimal increase. If you start adding up all the minimal increases, it becomes major. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Robert Sims, 2662 Montgomery. First of all, I have a couple of questions. One is, how many EMTs are on the department now?
We can answer your questions after you speak, Bob. This is
Okay.
your time to talk, but we'll answer them.
Well, I thought in a public hearing you could ask questions and answer.
I'm not sure of that, but we can after.
All right. The ambulance, when it was bought used. How long do you plan on running it? And do you have any money set aside to replace it? All right. Dan talked about the big big box stores. Are there any more in future that are going to be closing or asking for a reduction in their money? And a while back, there was a meeting with myself and some of the board members and manager with Bob Struck. And Bob Struck said it wouldn't be wise to have an ambulance in the township because of closeness to the town, or Marquette General, and now they're even closer. You take a look at Chalkley Township, Nagani Township, City of Nagani, they don't have an ambulance, you know? And if you get one called out here, and the fire department responds, and one from Marquette General, so you got two ambulances tied up, and if somebody else needs one, you don't have one. You know, before, when it was set up as a non-transporting first responding unit, people were, you know, we got there, the department got there, took care of the patient until the ambulance got there if they're late, and they helped them out. You know, and the reason why we became first responders was to take care of our people and help assist EMS at an accident or something, not to become in the business. You know, if you take a look at a new ambulance right now, you're looking minimum $250,000, and that's not painted or lettered or nothing. You know, I don't think they need additional people. And are these people gonna, so you're gonna have 24/7 coverage with these two additional people? Or are you gonna have 8 to 8 coverage, like it said in the paper? What about weekends? You know? And there are members in the department that I talk to daily and that don't want it. And, you know, it's a waste of money, space, and time to have it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else wish to comment? Oh,
Reggie Durant, 2523 US Highway 41 West, representing our business and also another piece of property that we have in the township. We pay taxes, I pay taxes at a home and also at our business in Marquette. The cost of adding is about, I think it was in the paper today, $45 for the home. Nothing. I spend that much probably at baby cakes and Starbucks in the course of a month. We're a growing township. We're going to be adding another large motel in the future, hotel in the future, probably another mall, some offices. I think the ambulance is a fantastic thing. I think it's good. I recently, and I mentioned to you folks once before when you had one hearing, that I called and requested Marquette Township for a transport of an elderly family member of mine. You know, it's wonderful to have that. They were there in no time at all. Of course, they didn't need the sirens, but they transported my family member, and they did a great job about it. There's been other cases where we've had to wait for UPHMS in one of my family's homes, and it was not a serious situation, but it still required transport. I support this. I know it's going to cost me quite a bit more at my business, but we are a professional fire department, and if we need to grow, we need to grow. And this is a great way to do it. I'm sure you'll find the funds in the future. I know you have the money to buy a new ambulance. Eventually, it's going to be, and whatever. But I think it's great, and I hope that you add the extra EMTs to the ambulance. And we appreciate what the fire department does for us, because we are an end user many times over the past of either fire or the ambulance. Thank you.
thanks, Reg. Anybody else wish to comment during public hearing? I'll ask again if anybody would like to comment in public hearing. One more time. Sure, Bob.
2662 Montgomery, Robert Sims. The that came to my mind was, if you're just gonna go to 8 o'clock at night, like I said in the paper, you have to have, if you're gonna have a full-time ambulance, it's gotta be full-time, 24/7. It can't be filled in, backfilled by volunteers on a paid-on-call. And if you want, you can check into it, and they'll tell you the same thing. You know, and the other thing is, if you have an ambulance on duty, those people cannot go to the fire. You got a car wreck or whatever, brush fire, they gotta go with that ambulance and stay with it. So you're down to 25 people in a department now. You're taking 2 people away and putting them on the ambulance. You're down to 23 people. You know, you got 2 people on leave, you know, but, so you're making this harder and harder for those people in the fire department. And they're not gonna be, you know, you think these people at EMTs are getting burnt out. These other guys are gonna start quitting too. You gotta take a look at your roster and see who's on that roster. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
We do have a letter before you close, though.
good, thank you for reminding
So,
me.
we do have a letter tonight from Jeff Sims, 1475 Erie Avenue. And it reads, "Good evening, I'm request this letter be read into the minutes of the public hearing tonight. I'm not able to attend because I'm working. The statement is to express my objection to the hiring of more full-time employees of the Marquette Township Fire Department. I go back to when the ambulance was in the planning stage. Manager Gerard said the township was going to try an ambulance, and if it didn't work, they would do away with it. Well, if you do not have the staff to take care of the calls, I would think it would be considered not working. I am not surprised by the position the fire department is in with the lack of staffing. However, again, during the planning stages of the ambulance, then Fire Department head Ron DeMars inflated the numbers of EMTs that were actually on the fire department when the info was presented to the township board. At this time, we also stated that he had spoken to all the medical staff within the fire department and everyone was on board. At this point, I was still in the fire department and I am not a paramedic, so if he had talked to all medical staff, you would think that I was involved in that. Well, I wasn't. At no time was I asked if I'd be interested in responding to calls on an ambulance for Marquette Township. With that said, after Ron had made those comments at a board meeting, I started asking other medical fire department members if they have been approached about the ambulance. And out of 5 or 6 that I asked, not a single one had been asked their feelings on this. So this alone makes it no surprise to me the position they are in today. If there was a group of people that were behind this, where are they now? In my opinion, that the township manager pushed so hard for this in the beginning, and now that is failing due to low response, he is to cover his tracks by hiring to make sure the ambulance gets out the door every time, and I don't think that is right. Now I'm going to write a letter disagreeing with this issue and not offer any suggestions. As most of you know, I was a member of the Marquette Township Fire Department for just short of 19 years. I have also been employed full-time as a paramedic for 15 years, so I'd like to think I know a little bit about this subject. First off, it blows my mind that the medical calls make up 85% of the call volume. Then non-medical fire department staff are still able to show up to the hall and get paid. That is the first thing that should be corrected. So if you have just EMTs paged out when it's a medical call only, with that alone, I'm sure the fire department would save a substantial amount of money. With that extra money, create a new pay structure for EMTs, make it worth their while to show up. I understand why the medical people wouldn't show up as much when non-medical people get to show up to the fire hall and get paid as much as them, and they don't have to do anything. There is no reason to have firefighters respond to the station on a medical call. If the ambulance gets on scene and they realize they need extra manpower, then they should request the firefighters be paid. You should also stagger the hours of the full-time employees that you have now for coverage until 8 p.m. Have one of the full-time firefighters start at 8 a.m. as they do now, and that person could be supplemented with the firefighter/EMT, that is with building and grounds. Then you have the other two full-time fire department employees work from noon to 8 p.m. Then they only need coverage from on-call staff for 12 hours at night. Now, for those 12 hours each night and weekend hours, you can create a call schedule. You pay two EMTs an hourly wage to be on call, and you pay them a decent amount when they get called in. You do this with the money you are saving by having 2 people on call responding versus paying 20 people when you only have 2 people are needed on the ambulance in the first place. Forsyth EMS does over double the calls of the Marquette Township Fire Department, and it's all done on a volunteer basis. Yes, sometimes they are able to get a crew out the door because everyone has a life, but they rely on Marquette General Hospital EMS to respond. That's not ideal, I don't think, for them, considering the distance between Marquette General Hospital and Gwynn, but as short as the distance between Marquette General Hospital and Marquette Township, I think that's completely an acceptable backup plan. I realize these plans are going to upset the people that are responding to the fire calls for the free money, but you can't please everyone. They've made a good amount of money over the time of the ambulance existence just showing up at the fire hall. I have other suggestions as well, but I won't take up too much of your time. But if any board members would like to speak to me on any of these suggestions or hear more, please feel free to contact me. I include my phone number on the bottom. My last concern is how this would look for the township to approve roughly $120,000 in spending on new employees, when just last week there was an article in the Mining Journal regarding Meyer and the tax tribunal. Manager Gerard spoke of the negative impact it would have on Marquette Township, but specifically mentioned the fire department and how big of a hit it would be to them. How can those statements be made one week and then turn around and spend a large sum of money? I feel that would be pretty irresponsible of the board to approve this during these times. In closing, I just feel there's a lot of other steps that should be taken to help with the staffing issue before throwing $120,000 away. Thank you for your time, Jeff Sims.
Well done. Okay, so I will ask 3 more times, just in case. Does anybody else want to comment during public hearing? Any other comments? Any other comments on the public hearing about the fire department, service expansion, special assessment? Okay. Public hearing is closed. We get an exact time. 6:54. So I think the best way to do this, our next item up, is consider increasing the fire department special assessment. We have a few questions we'd like to answer. Fire department chiefs, if you'd like to come up to the podium, maybe the easiest way to do this is to kind of tag team this to get some of the answers that have been brought up, if you don't mind. Good part of these items that have been discussed, in the last 2 or 3 meetings when we started considering this. Most of these answers that have been asked have been addressed, and they have been in the packet. First of all, Chief, are we short-staffed? That's one of the questions, that the ambulance is failing because we are short-staffed.
We will always be short-staffed. We need 100 people. And every fire department will tell you the same thing. Short-staffed, number-wise, probably not. People that are getting, so in that sense, if you want to, because we do have 14 EMTs on the department currently.
That was one of the questions, thank you.
Yeah. Are people getting burnt out through the number of calls? Yep, a little bit.
Because we're too busy.
Yep, but we're busy, and I do understand people have day jobs. They're working more hours, they're working harder today, you know, it's not, so the nighttime response has dwindled a little bit, and I do understand that. If I'm missing something, I just jotted down a few notes.
Yeah,
Yes,
me too.
money for a replacement ambulance, Randy can speak to that, and
Yeah.
we're in good shape there. And that'll probably be next year, maybe, you know, but the money is there. We have responded to the other townships quite a few times. Marquette City we responded to due to lack of ambulance. Nagani, Chocolate, Nagani City, Nagani Township. Currently have 29 members on the department, 2 on leave. I don't know, do you have any questions? I don't,
Yeah, I can ask the rest of these too, the ones that I had written down. How long have we been running the ambulance now?
August, September of
Before the
17?
year.
September 17, let's say, to
Yeah.
be, September 17.
Okay.
2 years.
Yeah, almost, yep.
Okay. And I know Randy's got some statistics on the call volume and stuff, so
Oh, yeah,
we can
yep.
talk about that. A rather startling one he showed me today. Money to replace the ambulance, I know we kind of talked about whether we want to do that. Is that something you want to address now, or?
Well,
you've got some
and we've
ideas?
looked at them, and you might have seen the ambulances across the street. We're looking at demos, and what are they, Reeboks, are they called, or what are they? Remounts. We won't go new, yeah, very, very true. New ambulances are expensive to get them fully outrigged. And we were looking, have not discussed this with the manager completely. I'd like to probably spend a little more than the manager would, but we're looking at probably 120,000 for what we're looking, and that's a nice ambulance. It's used, or a remount, but yeah, a new one, they're expensive.
But we don't need to do that now anyway.
We're not doing
That's
that now.
just in the future.
In the not too distant future, I would assume, and maybe, you know, and the manager, we have discussed this, so,
Well, you have
yes.
to be proactive and make sure the equipment you have works and
Oh, you better believe it.
needed, and, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
it's like owning a business,
And we
same
do have a
thing.
backup, just if something were to happen tomorrow, we do have there's the backup plan that manager and I have discussed, so.
Okay, so we've got the money, big box stores, that we can save that for Randy, he'll have that information. Not wise to have an ambulance continue. Okay, I think that was a statement more than a question. So I think most of the questions were answered from your standpoint. Then Randy, you've got a couple things. Yes, we do have, and I am still talking to Dulcie about getting it updated, and she got a hold of the county on the tax tribunal issues and what's pending. We know that we just had one go with.
Well, they have filed. They
Yeah.
have not gone to the tribunal, they've filed, and
Filed for it.
and all of the comments that I made at the last meeting were cautioned upon if they're successful. So, we don't know that, it'll be at least 2 years before we even get to that point. So, yes, it's an impact, and it would have cost the fire department, I believe, about $7,000, round numbers, basically, if that is in fact successful. We have several other things that are pending that are going to impact that decision, one of them being the Escanaba case. So, It's a continuing process, it is, but so is growth.
I was just gonna say, then the flip
You know,
side.
and basically, you know, this is a growing community. It has been a growing community consistently. It still is, contrary to what people like to say. We do have increasing revenue. Certainly, anytime you have a tax issue, whether it's the state of Michigan exempting properties from tax, or if it's tax tribunals, it reduces revenue. But there's also growth that's going on. And all you have to do is look around to see that. So, you know, that is factored into what the decision is. The board originated this conversation. I didn't, regardless of what the letters say or what the comments are. I did not initiate this. It's been discussed in at least 5 budget cycles. The board brought this back to the attention, brought it back to the table again, asked us under our job descriptions, our responsibility, the chiefs and mine, to bring you up to date on trends as they're emerging, and to bring that to your attention. We did that. You're the ones, this board is the ones that said, let's pursue this. Put together some information for us and bring it back. You scheduled a work session that nobody came to discuss it in detail. So it's back to you now. We've done what you've asked us to do. The question is now before you. Do you see a value in what's been proposed? And if you do, then you move forward. If you don't, it ends. Simple as that. We will continue to operate as we are, continuing to serve the residents. And yes, it is growing. The concept that the ambulance is not working is ridiculous, in my opinion. It's done nothing but improve and grow and been actually requested by township residents. So, but, you know, the facts are there, regardless of whether they want to be reviewed or not, the facts are there.
So the schedule idea too has been proposed by you and the manager and working it up with Rob, 8 to 8, 7 days a week.
Correct.
And
And that
we would
will,
be
that will
adding-
cover 70% of our current call volume with staffed personnel.
And the time frame on responses, even in that time slot, could be half of the time to get to the accident victim or the lift assist or whatever the issue is. So if it's gonna be 7 o'clock and you're already home and have your clothes changed and you're having dinner and somebody's gotta stop what they're doing, you've got just those few more minutes that somebody might be waiting. And if we can speed that up by having somebody already here for $45 a year,
Right.
average, you know, and some households it might only be 20. I haven't calculated from a business standpoint what ours is, because personally, I'll budget it in, doesn't matter. I think it's that important.
It's a
My
fairly
view.
simple calculation of 30 cents per $1,000 of taxable value is what it equates to.
What the heck was the other thing I was thinking? Well, you were talking about, you'd shown me the statistics, I believe, that the fire department pulled today. You might want to,
Well, it's right off of our dispatch records, basically. You know, the expansion to 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, basically, almost triples our staffed time for volume calls. You know, right now, there are about 500 roughly calls that occur between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock, you know, after the hours that we'll be able to cover over that 18-month period. So that's, you know, that's what we're looking at. What we're looking at is where is the demand? We've all seen it. 15, 20 minutes after the shift ends, 5 o'clock, siren starts going off. And it continues to go off until probably about 9 o'clock. But we figured on utilizing a 12-hour shift, we could cover about 70% of our total volume call. So it's not perfect. It's not intended to be perfect, and it's not full-time. Not intended to be full-time. We're not there.
I'm trying to cover the hours that, no, I wouldn't say the majority of calls in, but quite a few of the calls come in. It's that extra 21 hours for the whole week. And one of the questions I asked the fire department was, do you have people who are maybe on call now who would love to be a fireman and be an EMT or run the ambulance or whatever, that would change jobs and be full-time, you know? And the answer was yes, that there are people that are interested. So while it's a kind of a nationwide problem right now for all fire departments, I think we're pretty lucky that the people they've approached that are on staff are interested in doing this. So yeah, we've talked about all the bad parts of it, or if there are any. You guys put in a lot of hours and spreadsheets and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, because we were asking a lot of these same questions that came up tonight. We want the stats. We don't want to make this commitment. I don't see the ambulance going away, but, if something changes, then we said we'd change with it. So I think we have enough questions or those questions answered. Do we have board questions? Anybody have any comments? Or Pete?
I've talked to different residents of the area of our township and that, and the majority of them, I would say, the only one I had one person say they didn't, but they don't understand everything about it. The morale of the fire department, people who are working over there, volunteers and full-time, are at a high. Everyone tells me how the morale has changed over the last several years. They're very happy and they're very encouraged about what's happening there. So I can't see that people are so against it. But because unless they're telling me one thing and telling someone else, but something differently. But the morale is very encouraging. They're all, on a high right now because of the changes that are made with the fire hall and the ambulance and all the other things. So it's hard for me to believe anything else but that. And I have talked to quite a few of them. So.
Anybody else? Dan?
I've talked to quite a few of the guys over at the fire hall also. There's a few that are not supportive. They feel that for some reason, they feel that the paid-on-call is going to go away. The paid-on-call is not going to go away. There's no intentions of paid-on-call going away. This is a win-win for everybody, for the citizens of our township. Seconds mean everything in fires and in EMS. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I'm very happy to see this moving forward because it's time is everything. If it's me having a heart attack and there's 2 or 3 minutes difference between Marquette General getting there or Marquette Township getting there, I'll take the $45 a year and run with it for sure. I've been on calls with the fire department, and we've waited 25 minutes to get an ambulance to get there. That's ridiculous. If they're tied up on something else, and it happens, if not daily, it happens weekly or several times a week that they don't have a rig. And this way we're going to have coverage, we're going to protect our citizens, and that's the bottom line.
Anybody else? Ernie?
A couple things. Talk about the ambulance and the cost. When it originally started that year, I was really concerned with the cost. My concern was, are we going to generate the funds to make it viable? And I gave them a year to come up with the financial information, both the cost and the revenue and that. And they did it after a year, and we were doing a little bit better than break even. So the costs were there and the revenue was there to substantiate it and that. That was also for purchasing of the ambulance, the whole works and that. So I was satisfied with that. The other one is that I have a family member, some of you know, I've used them 5 times since the first of the year and that. Each time the ambulance crew came from the township and that, and 2 times they were transported to ER at the hospital and that. So I see the worth of it. It didn't take them long to get there. When you call them at 10:30 in the evening, you're going to take a little time to get there. But in the past, when we had to wait for the ambulance from the hospital, it was a wait and that. There was no question about it. So I've been through this personally and that. And I can see the benefits for it and that. And the crew that comes are well versed, very polite. They know what's going on. They know how to deal with people, and they know how to deal with this one individual that I'm referring to and that. So I'm happy with it. It's going to cost me $21 a year, $21 to $25 a year and that. I'm not up in that high bracket area and that. But being a retiree, I'm also concerned with all the costs in that. So it's well worth it as far as I'm concerned in that. And it's one of those things, we as board members and as a township, we must be looking towards the future as to where we want to go with the township and that. And what's going on in the township and the future of that. Sometimes we really don't know as board members what's going to come up next in that. Sometimes the planning commission gets something that, right out of the blue, and that don't know about, and the township planners get things, and then the board finds out. But there's a lot of things happening in the township. You just look around where they're digging holes, what's going to be there, what isn't going to be there. So I think we have to look to the future and plan for our citizens and for our businesses, because that's what makes a growing concern, a growing community in that. So.
Randy?
I had 2 contacts only from township residents, both township residents. One would prefer that additional funding be spent on law enforcement as opposed to fire, but was not opposed to the proposed millage. And the other came in just wanting information, facts, what the proposal was based on, and was satisfied. So I don't see him here tonight, so apparently it's okay with him. So that was it. I've had a number of people stop me out in the stores. I'm out in the businesses and the stores here regularly, and routinely see folks, and generally positive is the feel that I get.
Okay. And well, and I was just looking at the June alarm time analysis, and most of the time frames, midnight, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, or 2 to 3% of the calls, which means 1 or 2 call-outs at night, and the majority is 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. That's right in there, and that's what, we get this report every month, so that's one of the things we looked at and said, hey, we need to somehow cover that. That's where the discussion came in. We've got 5 or 6 calls instead of 1. So that's significant, and that's what got this discussion started. Any other questions, comments, John?
We've been looking at this for a long time. And the information presented to the board clearly, to date, clearly justified the fire department special assessment, and it clearly has been in conflict with what comments have been made tonight at this public hearing. Our responsibility as a board is not as detailed enough to know the workings intimately of the fire department. But it is our responsibility to separate the information that we receive here at the board. It's like separating the fly waste from the pepper on the tablecloth. We need to do that, and that's our responsibility. But I'm inclined to think that tonight we've had a very heavily waived argument that the fire department special assessment is not going to cost our community an inordinate amount of money. We've had great response supporting our fire department, and in fact, the fire department is our outstanding example of well-managed employees. We may have some discussion that we'll have to watch very closely if we pass this tonight. What occurs with the results of the passage? But I'm convinced that the impact is not adverse by doing so. And the impact is very responsible to act on without further delay. I think that we can take a look at this with time and measure it with requested information about the details about what's going on with this improvement that we've had suggested. We can always come back. But the point is, our responsibility is the safety of our citizens. And if the response time is cut back and the citizens, both in the business community and in our residential homes, is improved, if they think that we've done something good, we have to back that up with information, and we have a duty to look at detailed information that comes in on it. But it's not something we should not act on. I move to grant the fire department a special assessment with the impact of what occurs is going to be closely watched. That's good enough for everybody. That's my motion. To grant the fire department special assessment requested.
Do you have an effective date on that? Be the effective date?
I don't know, is it something that can be implemented at the next?
January
Because
1st
we
of
don't have to have an
2020 or-
election.
Be the first of the year, would be the target.
All right with the motion maker, the first of the year?
That's fine.
Ernie?
I think the motion has to indicate the increase from 2.5 to 2.8.
So moved.
So, and I don't know what else has to be included in the motion, and I relate to the attorney, if there's anything else in the motion we have to put in it.
Especially since it's a special assessment, anything special we have to add or say, or?
The increase is the critical component, and you've corrected that, and the effective date would be essentially statutory, but the first of the year would be the effective date.
I'll support that motion.
It would be the December levy.
It would go out and, yes.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Any other questions or comments, information, gentlemen? Anything else to share, ask, present?
We've discussed this in every way.
Go ahead, Dan.
Even if you do approve this motion tonight, it's not saying 100, I mean, this is a done deal. We are still working on other options, and we're working it right now to see if we can do other options. Because I understand, I live in the township too. I understand where everybody's coming from. But I'm glad and I thank you for support. I hope you support this. But we are looking at other options. I do understand. I'm not saying it's going to work though.
Before you take your
Because
vote on this,
we have taken experiences from the other townships, the Forsyths, and I've researched this, how this works. I don't know if it'll work. We're trying it, but nobody else is having success.
What you're actually doing tonight is you are amending the special assessment from 2.5 to 2.8 mils to be levied December 31st if the cost of the department justifies the 2.8 mils. It's not an automatic 2.8 mils, and as the chief said, we're still looking at other options, but we wanted to get this back before you because you requested it for this meeting. So you could consider it and take an action if you wish to, but it would not be effective until the December levy this year if we go forward with that process and it justifies 2.3 mils. It's a special assessment up to 2.3 mils justified by the actual cost necessary for the 2020 budget.
2.8.
I'm sorry, 2.8. the 0.3 of a mil, the 0.3 mil. But it would be for the 2020 budget, if that's what's necessary for the 2020 budget.
And this is what we need to move forward.
Correct.
Ernie?
Along with that, being that it won't be levied, whatever it is, won't be levied till the end of the year on the new one.
Correct.
So any additional personnel cannot be moved forward until really after the first of the year.
Correct.
When the dollars has been confirmed what's coming in, and that's
Correct.
So when we first started talking about this, you were thinking you'd come up with like 3 mills. You would have to go up to that, I believe, or you were gonna add a mill. I'm not real sure the exact. So in your talking and working it out, that's how you came down with how you were gonna structure it. I didn't ask for a motion. I didn't know if we'd have one. It was just part of the
I'm sorry.
discussion, so that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, John made one. We have to address it. But my question to you then is this presumptuous? Did you expect a motion? Can you put this in place? Or, you know what I'm saying? Is this a workable thing now? Because the public hearing is to notify the public and have discussion, and while we've talked about it quite a while,
Right.
is this something that you can implement by January, or
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, where
Yes.
we're at,
we can do it the way it is,
Yes,
the
Yeah.
stuff
but we
designed
are,
now?
we are trying other out. I'm just letting you know,
right.
nobody's been successful. We're trying it also to say, so I can feel better and say, yes, we're trying. But
So-
it's not,
Right, the 2.8 mil structure that we've put together supports shifting to 12-hour shift, 7 days a week, 8 to 8. Okay, along with all the other things that go with that, and we've got the whole package that we've talked about in the past meetings. We will continue to look at other options, this being the maximum option. So, you know, there are a number of different, we have at least 3 different scenarios that could work, but if the board agrees and passes this, we have up to that 2.8 mils to work with,
Yep.
within that framework.
The intent of what I was saying was to give license to
Correct.
to do that, to continue your efforts to improve the safety as you see it for the citizens. That's all we're doing. And the information that has been brought to us in this public hearing has also implied that we need to be very carefully watching the information that's provided so that we can justify whatever occurs. That's
Yeah.
all.
I understand, yes.
Yes, and basically what it amounts to.
We're
what-
all in a good position here, but I don't want us to stay on the dime. I want us to move on.
Randy?
I was just gonna say, you know, the whole purpose here is to accomplish what your objective is, and that is to get out the door with as many of the calls as we can within a cost framework, basically, and that's what we're proposing, you know, with the maximum 2.8 mils, we can cover then 70% of the call volume, which we think is gonna fall between 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, including weekends. And that's what this was predicated on, the proposal that's here tonight. Now, if we can do it differently, we will. And it may not be 2.8 mils, it may be 2.7, it may be whatever. But basically, you know, that this gives us the opportunity then, knowing what the parameters are, to go forward and try and work it out.
So the motion actually needs to say up to
2.8.
mils.
Well, and that's what you do with the special assessment. The special assessment basically establishes what your maximum parameter is, provided that your program actually costs that. If it's less, then you reduce your mill. If it's more, then you have to come back and look for an increase. So it covers your actual budget.
Anything else? Yes, Pete?
I think it just shows that what we're trying to do is take care of our residents. Our township is growing. We did the same thing with the police department. There was a need to increase our hours, we did that. The need for fire protection, we're gonna do that, and the EMSs also. So I think that's just trying to be a little more responsible to the residents, and that's the way I look at it, and that's why I feel. I think it's the right way to go, the right move, so.
Okay. Nothing else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh, yeah, and a special assessment, yeah, sorry.
So the motion will be to increase the special assessment from 2.5 up to 2.8 mils to be levied on January 1st, 2020. Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes?
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Call the gentleman.
Thank you, that gives us parameters to work within.
Yes.
Okay, next up is 7A, staff reports. I gave you a rundown of what I talked about at my supervisor's retreat. Do you need us, Dan? I don't wanna,
No, I was just gonna make sure.
Oh, good.
thanks. I'm not gonna belay, I already gave you my report. I just wanted to share some of that new stuff with you that I had learned or forgot or didn't know if you knew. It was probably the best retreat I've been on. And I think, like I said in the memo, it's because it was so specific. It was just supervisors and deputies. It was it's like a small classroom, like you would, in high school versus those big 100 rooms, and then you had 20 in a room. Very significant. Very one-on-one, very relaxed, good information. The main reason I went was because of the assessing portion of it, because I just need definitely more information on assessing and learning that. And I'll follow up with Randy and Dulcie after this week, probably. But I want to thank everybody for letting me go. The gas cost wasn't much in the Chevy, so I didn't have a big mileage bill when I came back.
You say you didn't take the Jeep?
I'd probably be deaf with the flapping top. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to go. It was extremely educational. And again, I shared it with you too. Fire department. Maybe that's why Dan was kind of wondering if we needed him. But there is a copy of the letter in here.
Yep.
Or did I get it on my?
No, it's there.
My
Yeah.
desk, yeah,
The
okay.
letter, the thank you letter to the KBIC
Yeah,
is in the packet.
The board had asked to have a copy.
Mhm.
Okay.
I will have to say that money was well spent. Some of the safety gear that we have over there was, needed some updates, we'll put it that way.
Okay.
Did you say it's seen its better life?
Yes.
Was it just boots or, I mean?
No, it was
how
boots,
that?
helmets, gloves.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well worn.
yeah. There was like one individual that just left the room that had holes in his boots. And that should not happen. So it's
Well,
money
okay.
well spent.
Apparently they're used, which means we're going on lots of calls, and they're
Well, contrary to
They're not
public
just
opinion,
sitting.
yes, we are going on
they're
lots
not
of
just
calls.
sitting
and
because we're not doing anything.
Yeah, and it's like everything else. I mean, it's not just wear, but, they're leather boots, and around chemicals and everything else. It's no different than public works. I mean, we're replacing boots constantly in public works because of the chemicals they work around. It just attacks the leather and even synthetic. The problem with synthetic is it gets to your feet. Leather kind of keeps it out. So, I mean, the equipment does take a beating, not just in response, but in training and, and everything else. So, yeah, so that was an unanticipated gift that we're very thankful for, and it gave us the ability to replace some things that were going to be 2020 budget items. So, we were able to do it this year.
Okay. Well, we don't have any staff here, Public Works or Assessing. I did tell you that I was gonna get that new tax tribunal log. I heard Dulcie call the county for an update, so we'll get that to you. Public Works wise, I don't know if he's got anything going. Our superintendent won't start for a couple more months yet.
Yeah, well, we are, I mean, obviously, there is always something going on with Public Works in terms of maintenance and operations, and we've had, Building and Grounds has been working with them on some of the materials, basically, for an extra set of hands. We do have a crew leader who is still out on medical leave, so we're backing them up, and they're covering call on a more regular basis with the one person out of the loop temporarily. So, but they're doing well. No major issues at the moment.
Good. Attorney report.
Well, it's been a fairly busy month. We responded to the tax tribunal appeal on the Myers issue. We also just resolved and do not have the paperwork completed the other pending one for the JKT leasing, which is the Thomas Theater group, a matter of about 2 days ago. We tweaked the language a little bit more on the license agreement, the trail license agreement that was discussed briefly at the last meeting. A significant issue has come up on the Fox Subaru site plan and special use permit, so there's been some consultation back and forth with the zoning department and a lot of correspondence, 4 different ways on that in terms of not just is there a violation, because that's pretty evident, but what the remedy ought to be. Also putting together a little bit of guidance for the Planning Commission, hopefully before their next meeting, as they evaluate the ordinance possibilities for recreational and/or medical marijuana, just things that should be considered in that process, because that's kind of an evolving process. The state of Michigan, as I've reported before, is supposed to come up with guidelines or regulations. Because that hasn't happened, the state has issued what they've termed emergency regulations in the short term. I've reviewed all of those at length to determine what they contain, and there's nothing saying that the regulations that are finalized will even resemble these. Although the amount of work that was put into the emergency ones, I think there probably will be a striking resemblance between the final version, but there's no guarantee in that. But those are all things pretty much for the Planning Commission to be taking a look at. We had a slightly out of the ordinary freedom of information request this past month that I also was requested to give some input on. And then, as in any month, some just miscellaneous one-time consults from department heads and so forth of a 5 to 10 minute nature.
Great, thank you. And I keep reminding everybody, we're not his only client, and he's still getting all this done. County-wise, we don't have anything. We kind of were supposed to meet last week, but I was gone, so we'll get back into that. We've just been meeting once a month. So nothing there. Anything community-wise? What are you hearing? We kind of talked about ambulance people and fire department people calling, a couple comments, nothing else in the community?
Just construction.
Okay, how about committee updates? Planning, roads, rec, and events?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Oh, I'll wait. I got under the draft minutes. I got a committee reports.
Okay.
Mr. Zappa referred to it a couple times here, so the Planning Commission report is a little bit longer. First, the commission moved the transportation plan to be included as an appendix to the master plan. And I believe, that was in the road committee report from the last time. And the commission has begun the necessary zoning ordinance amendments to accommodate medical and recreational marijuana. We decided the text amendment process would begin with text amendments to Article 2, which is definitions, and then progress to Article 15, which is principal uses permitted in districts. As you are aware, once the proposed text amendments have been completed and the required public hearing and Marquette County Commission review has been accomplished, the amendment will be moved to the board for their input and/or approval. After text amendments have been incorporated into the zoning ordinance through board action, the board will then decide whether any or all aspects of the medical or recreational marijuana may be licensed in the township. Again, that's an ordinance that the board would take care of. The previously approved special use permit for the buffer yard and the access management to the Northwoods Road for the Subaru dealership have been revoked as a result of buffer yard and clearing violations with regard to previously approved site plan. As directed by the Planning Commission, Fox Subaru has been noticed and is required to reapply for a special use permit within 30 days of the June 10th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. The new application must be filed with all the obligatory information and associated fees, including a revised site plan that denotes amenable corrections to the required buffer yard along the entire southern boundary. A new public hearing will then be scheduled, and all adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property will be notified, as well as with the newspaper general circulation through the Mining Journal. Essentially, the whole process is going to start over. The road committee, as you may recall, that was canceled for last week. The next meeting is scheduled for August 6th. And the recreation committee tonight will be at our next board meeting, but I did distribute a letter of thank you to Walmart for your information tonight that was put together by the rec committee and the zoning administrator. And he'll be approaching the chairman and supervisor and the manager for their signatures on that. And if there's no questions, that would be it.
Well, the Fox Subaru, where, Roger touched on that too a little bit. What does that mean to them or to us, that we have to go through the process again? What penalty is that for them, or?
Their penalty is in the pocketbook, really, because they have to go back and redo their site plans. The site plan that was approved showed a buffer yard and clearing limits along the southern border, and they have egressed into that significantly with a number of changes, both required by the DEQ and a contractor that just got carried away with his clearing. And they've been advised on it one time several months ago, and then they went back in and started doing some more clearing. And it's actually, we're losing quite a bit of the tree cover between Fox Subaru and Northwood Roads. And if you're, one of the special use permits was required because it's a business associated to a rural residential area on the other side of the road, so it requires a special use permit. The other special use permit that was required was to allow that business to have access to that residential road through a single driveway. Both of those special use permits have been voided, and they need to reapply for that, so they really need to start the process over. The gentleman was here at the Planning Commission meeting, and he explained a lot of issues that they were having, but it is nothing the township or the zoning department can do about the issues he's having. It's more of a management and issue and construction site oversight that they're having a problem with. And one of the issues that did come up, and there's nothing we can do about, is they cleared so many of the trees in their 30-foot buffer area that they caused damage to the trees that were in the road right-of-way, and now the county has contracted to have the rest of those trees in the right-of-way removed, which is certainly their prerogative, and there's nothing the township can do about it. It's road right-of-way. But that's the amount of damage that was caused back there in that buffer yard. So they need to do some work and get some new site plans put together so that we can take a look at that again. And yeah, they need to approve the whole thing all over again. As it stands right now, they don't have a special use permit for the business to start operations, and they don't have a special use permit for access out the rear driveway.
A little debilitating. Roger?
Trustee Wiegand touched on most of what I was going to say when I had my hand up earlier. But your zoning ordinance specifies certain types of buffer zones ranging from what are called A to E, or F maybe even, depending on the diversity of what's in each adjacent zone. Because it is a rural residential and because it's a development district zone, that requires a fairly significant buffer zone between the two. The initial site plan had contemplated that being satisfied primarily by a fairly wide, and I don't recall the exact number of feet, but a wide and fairly dense tree buffer. Without that, in order to, and it's difficult to replace those size of trees, it remains to be seen what's going to be proposed in the new application, but it will probably have to include a raised berm with plantings and or a masonry or a wooden fence, but something fairly significant. And the problem is compounded if you drive by there by the fact that it's kind of in a hole if you go down Northwoods Road, at least for parts of it. So just placing a berm may or may not be an effective buffer zone, because all that does is brings you up to road level perhaps. Again, there are a lot of options and alternatives that could be out there, but depending on how big the berm is or the type of buffer zone that's now going to be proposed, it may impact other components of the rest of the site plan, such as parking areas and pavement or even other aspects of the whole site plan. So there are a lot of unknowns that will have to be addressed in this.
What was initially in their approved site plan was a 30-foot, and they required a 30-foot area on their property, and it was required that they have a buffer yard E type. They pretty much eliminated that, and the area of the trees that are removed, if you consider the road right-of-way, is about 60 feet. And they were significant trees. They were very tall, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with Northwoods Road. It's very secluded for the most part, but it's not so secluded anymore. I would encourage you to take a drive down there. They are being encouraged at the last Planning Commission meeting to think seriously about a buffer yard F, which is a berm, secured screening fence, and plantings. So they have to see what they come up with.
So is it up to them what they put up, or do we still
No,
have
it's not
some
up to
input?
them what to put up. It's up to them to submit a proposal.
That's what I
And then it's up to the Planning Commission to approve it or not approve it. And when the Planning Commission goes back and look at it again, they can approve it as it's presented, or they can approve it with additional conditions. They can do it either way.
Steve?
Same question, Dave. Are they zoned on Brookton Road there the same as behind Fry Chevrolet? Is that zoned the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I think it's a development district or general business abutting rural residential.
I was just looking at that, well, now it's 3 weeks ago, but the way behind Fry's in their buffer zone versus what I see on the map, I mean, the pictures up here, you know, you got better trees here than you do down there, so I just wondered what's the difference in the two?
Yeah, when you, The original buffer yard at the Subaru dealer was not gonna have a screening fence. It wasn't required under buffer yard E if they had 30-foot of buffer yard, a 30-foot width. But that kind of changed when they removed all the screening, so we need to come up with something else.
And maybe put some trees back, I suppose. They can't do those.
Well, they can't do the big trees. There's a defined planning schedule that, with the buffer yard descriptions, a defining planning schedule that has to be met, depending on which buffer yard type they go with. There's like 4 different categories of buffer yard E, depending on the width. And then when you drop down to buffer yard F, most prominent difference between the two is pretty much all of the Fs require screening fence and berms.
So what happens after this is approved and it's agreed upon and they don't do it again? Then what happens? Are there fines or more public
Back to the
hearings?
but the best you can do, right now is revoke their permit. I mean, it's fairly substantial. I mean, they've got a lot of money invested there. For them not to be able to do anything else because they're in violation of zoning ordinance. I mean, it's pretty much a matter of shut them down, but it's a whole legal question that Roger would get to answer.
Well, hopefully we don't get to that point.
I don't know that we've ever gotten to that point, and hopefully we'll get this worked out.
Okay. Any questions?
I just had one. So until that site plan is approved, there's no construction that they can even do there?
They have to stay out of the buffer yard area.
But they can still do construction on,
The building? Yes.
okay.
The zoning, the special use permit not being approved would prevent them from opening and prevent them from going in and doing any more work on the buffer yard. And just, I mean, they cut an access driveway which was supposed to be 24 feet out to Northwoods Road, and if you looked at the area they cleared, it's probably closer to 100 to 150 feet that they just totally took all the trees out. And then they went down the road where they were going to bring the water and sewer in off Brookton Road, and they cleaned another 150-foot spot just completely void of trees so they could bring 2 little lines through there. And this is just where they got carried away.
Northwoods Road?
Yeah.
That sounds more than just carried away.
And the county, is for good reason, has asked them to remove the rest of the trees in the right-of-way because they've destroyed the root base on those trees, and there are already some trees that are starting to lean over towards Northwoods Road, so they've caused some serious problems over there.
Well, and I don't, might have been the planning meeting or something I was at, that all the residents were not happy either.
Well, this need for another public hearing will give the residents an opportunity to show up and express
Okay.
their concerns.
Thanks for that. Yes, John?
Long as we're hearing a report from the planning commission, I think we should take steps early on to do something that the state failed to do when they had marijuana on the ballot. So I'll just say that it's important that what comes to the board from the planning commission regarding marijuana, that it be absent of any tie bar. In other words, medicinal and recreational use of marijuana is 2 separate areas of interest. And for those that are eager to promote marijuana, they like to tie them together because they get the same reaction you got when the state put it on the ballot. And that is, people don't see that what they might not like tied to something that they see that there's an interest in researching So I ask our planning commission to take note that what comes to the township board regarding it, not have medicinal and recreational marijuana information tie-barred together.
Okay,
And I think right now, it's been considered separate. The definitions are separate. The definitions section of the zoning ordinance will probably increase by 3 pages. There's that many definitions in there. And then you go over to Article 15, where it describes where you can put these facilities. And those will have to remain separate because there certainly are. And then it's up to the board to implement which ones they want and not implement which ones they don't.
okay. Now, you wanted something with draft reports, Randy?
Yeah, on the election committee minutes, instead of July 9th, it should be July 2nd, 2019. So I have to make that correction.
Okay. You want to go through a motion and stuff, or are you just?
No, it's just,
For your,
it's
Your
just for the board's information. I'll
Okay.
change it on the draft minutes, just a clerical error.
okay. That is part of the approval process. Policy discussion. Further consideration of NTN non-exclusive trail license agreement. We have looked at this a couple times, and a few changes were recommended, and Roger made those. I don't know what anybody wants to do with that. Were there any more questions or issues or changes? Dave?
If I understand this correctly, we are simply approving the final version of this so that it can then be submitted to NTN for their
I
consideration.
haven't seen this yet.
So we're still a ways down the road from this, right?
Yeah, this would be a draft, basically, that would be submitted to NTN for comment. You know, and we'll consider their comments, but ultimately it'll be this board that decides what the ultimate license is.
Then after they get done, it comes back to the board for final approval, right?
Correct.
Randy?
I'll make a motion, we consider the NTN non-exclusive trail license agreement as a draft and forward it to NTN.
I'll second. Okay, whatever.
Okay, any other questions or legal questions or anything? We're good?
Just a lot of reading, trying to start.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we can, should we actually sign this and send it, or wait till we get it back?
I would wait till we got it back.
We don't have to send it to them signed?
No.
Okay.
It's a draft.
Send it to them as a draft.
Send it to them as the proposed license, you know, and let them get comments, and then if they sign it, then it'll come back to the planning commission or directly to the board?
I think it's to the board, it's a
Back to the
kind of a
board.
contract, yeah.
Yep.
So it'll show up on the agenda when we get it back then. Okay. Consider request for proposals for future recruitment. This is also a repeat that was brought back.
A couple of corrections or a couple of modifications were proposed. One has been taken care of. The other one was establishing a fixed date. I did do a little bit more research, and the Michigan Municipal League currently has 3 searches going on for cities in Michigan, for city managers. So, so there is current activity going on in some of these areas.
Randy?
I move to direct the manager to submit request, or RFPs, it's request for proposals, and move it forward to the various entities that do that.
Support.
Okay, you said various entities, so who does that end up being?
Well, it'll be up to the manager to decide that.
Yeah, basically what I would do is I would send it to Michigan Municipal League, Michigan Township Association, Michigan Association of Counties, do a general advertisement on a couple of general websites that we're looking for proposals, put it in the mining journal, an abbreviated form, directing them to contact us for a copy of the proposal if they're interested. So we'd advertise it at various sites and then in the local paper as well.
Falls in line with the other RFPs that we usually do, so.
And this is just so that we're gonna get some proposals back from search agencies.
Correct. We can do your job for this much within this time frame.
Okay.
And we'll be using, one of the comments was on page 9 of 12, where it says completed within 3 months, to put a finite date, end of November or November 15th or whatever the board
Whatever
feels
date you
comfortable
want.
with.
Are we good with that? No questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Continued discussion of fund types and definitions. We've had a busy week of reading that stuff, I tell you. Thanks, Dave, for your comments and recommendations. It was very, very thorough.
Can I read?
Can you read? I would say, can you read? Sure, do you have something tied in that you want to?
No, just that. I don't know if you wanted to read that for the public or.
Well, it's part of the packet, that's kind of
It's
extensive.
really not part of the packet.
No, it was sent out.
That's
to them.
right, yeah.
Maybe you should read it, so.
Yeah,
you know.
that's fine then.
That's why I asked. Okay. We currently list 10 funds: general, fire, liquor law, township improvement, library, stormwater, wastewater, water, solid waste, and metro authority. Listed under those 10 funds are 80 departments. The bulk of the departments are listed under wastewater, which has 17, general, which has 22, and water, which have 23. The 7 remaining funds each list between 8 and 1 departments. Listed under those departments are too many accounts to count. What I found most interesting is the wastewater and solid waste funds, wastewater, water, and solid waste funds list contingency departments as opposed to contingency accounts. The departments comprise $63,554, or about 5% of the wastewater, and about 5% of the water, and the solid waste fund in their contingency department has $0 currently budgeted. And then both wastewater and water funds list a replacement and improvement department with only one account attached to each. The attached accounts are titled as miscellaneous. The miscellaneous accounts within the replacement and improvement departments contain $246,401 in the wastewater and $320,953 in the water funds. And that is 19.3 and 21.5% of the budgets of those two funds. When we put the amount contained within the replacement and improvement department together with the contingency departments in the same two funds, there's more than 1/4 of those two budgets that are for non-specific purposes, either contingency or miscellaneous. And additionally, if by definition a miscellaneous account is a general administrative account covering a large number of minor expenses individually too small to categorize into separate accounts or line items, then the miscellaneous accounts within the wastewater and water fund replacement and improvement departments can be used for anything that can be classified as replacement and or improvement. And I'm not suggesting anything there except it's just a lack of transparency and accountability. Now, with that in mind, I respectfully submit the following for the board's consideration. Under definitions, miscellaneous account, a general administrative account covering a large number of minor expenses, individually too small to categorize into separate accounts or line items. If any individual expense increases in size in later periods, they shall be tracked within a separate account or line item. Miscellaneous account balances shall not exceed 2% of the budget for the general fund or associated department within, and shall not exceed 5% of the budget for the wastewater and water funds or associated departments within. And then I thought we need to identify a dollar amount or a percentage that triggers removal from a miscellaneous account into a separate account. I would defer that to the manager for how to do that. We need a definition for assigned. According to the stuff I was reading that the manager provided, I would recommend that an assigned fund, department, or account which has been designated as assigned may be used as defined. Use other than as defined must be presented to the board for approval not later than the next scheduled board meeting. The definition for committed would be a fund, department, or account which has been designated as committed may only be used as defined, and its use must be presented to the board for approval not later than the next scheduled board meeting. Use other than as defined requires prior board approval. Contingency account would be categorized then as assigned. It would be an account covering cost overruns for budgeted expenses or revenue shortfalls that are 2% or less of the general fund department or 5% or less of the wastewater and water fund or department. A contingency account balance shall not exceed a percentage and I left the percentages out because I'm not sure what that percentage should be. I would look for a recommendation for the manager on that, the size of those contingency accounts. Emergency reserve department. I know we talked about this before, and we talked about, I think it was my proposal that we have a emergency fund and a operational reserve fund. But considering the money that you'd be talking about with those, I would think it'd be better interest of the township to put them under an emergency reserve department and categorize it as committed. And it would be a department covering revenue shortfalls greater than 2% of the general fund or 5% of the wastewater and water fund, and for unbudgeted costs resulting from unplanned or catastrophic events. The emergency reserve department balance shall not exceed 33% of the general fund budget and shall not exceed 25% of the wastewater and water fund budgets. The only thing that's missing in that, according to what I was reading, is that some thought needs to be given to defining a timely replacement schedule once the funds have been used. I would additionally propose the following board actions. Eliminate the contingency department and replace it with a contingency account assigned to various departments as appropriate. By removing the department designation and replacing with an account designation, the total dollars held as contingency are reduced as only the department containing a contingency account are funded, as opposed to a percentage of the entire fund. Divide the existing replacement and improvement department into two separate departments, a replacement department and an improvement department. The replacement department account should include infrastructure replacement account, that would be categorized as committed, specific to the appropriate fund as defined by an approved asset management or other defined program. A capital expense account, categorized as committed. Each fund has equipment which, depending upon its forecastable useful life, will need to be replaced at some point, such as the sheriff department vehicles, public works, trucks, backhoes, building and grounds tractors, and mowers. And then a miscellaneous account, an administrative tool, much as we described above. And the next department would be an improvement department and would include CIP accounts, be categorized as committed, be a separate account specific to each approved CIP. Each CIP account should be included in the budget until fully funded, should include a miscellaneous account, And then the last comment would be that a fund or department budget containing an infrastructure replacement, capital expense, or CIP account shall include an annual budget addendum summarizing each account's balance. That's what I got.
Then,
Yes, sir.
Dave, when you're talking about this, are you talking about putting amounts to it? Like, on page 32 of our report from the auditor, they say building and improvements, 25 to 40 years, water and sewer, 50 years. Are you saying putting an amount to that and then build it up until, till you get to that amount?
Well, I'm saying that we need, and we're working towards that, an asset management program that's going to define the cost of replacing our infrastructure. And once we've got that asset management program, we need to decide how much money we want to set away for that and into a replacement department. And
Similar to the road project, if you know what it's gonna be and budget it.
And if you think back and when we were talking about the balances that we have out there that we're collecting some 0.3% interest on, once we get everything straightened around, there might be some room to put some of that money into replacement accounts for various projects without violating any of the restricted definitions for those accounts.
Which goes back to that replacement and improvement fund and having money there and taking stuff out and not having it defined. And I mean, that was something that was discussed years ago. It's just, let's figure out what that money's for. And if it's for something like the CIP, put an account with it so you can identify it.
And that's what this is an effort to do, is to
I think it's a
single all
good
that out.
explanation. I'm not a fan of miscellaneous accounts, but I guess they have to happen sometimes. I
Well,
was
and
looking in
everything
my
has a
notes, though.
miscellaneous account because there's always little things in there that you don't, I was surprised to see that much miscellaneous in wastewater and water.
I'm sure that one of the sessions I had last week said to not define emergency, because it was funny how they were talking about the same thing we've been talking about with the accounts and defining them. But that just means give it something else, give it another name. Doesn't make any difference if it's another contingency, as long as you have the definition.
As long as you got in the field that we're doing as far as the infrastructure and, public works and sewer and water, you're gonna have something come up. It's gonna be a emergency. So you
Yeah,
have to be able to cover that.
It doesn't matter what you call it, just as long as you're setting the money aside for that unbudgeted expense or that event that happens that nobody thought would happen. As long as that money's sitting there, and if it's classified as committed, then it takes a board action to do something else with it, and I think that's what it should take.
Well, on your bad winters, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Randy said about $20,000 just to dig a hole and get started. Something like that, so.
Small break.
Yeah.
And the manager can really define those either percentages and hone tone them, fine them down to either the percentage or a dollar amount, because he can go by past history.
Well, and the percentages that were in there, the 33% and the 25%, that was what was recommended.
That seemed high, yeah.
Yeah, that was what was recommended by the auditor, right?
Correct.
Anything else? Anybody wants
3
to
months to 4 months.
talk about it? Yeah, well done. So, what's your pleasure on, do we need another work session to finalize this, or in trying to get some numbers, have the manager put some real numbers to this, or, Lois gave us a bunch of good explanations and departments and accounts.
Well, the board should take some action, and the numbers we'd put together would be the preliminary budget. We would apply this to the 2020 budget process. So we'd reformat the budget format, basically, which we're just about to start.
So you'd really like to have this in place so that you can do that.
At least the definition, so we can structure so Lois can basically put the structure together for the budget.
Do you have any comments on what's written here? You probably discussed it anyways.
Yeah, basically, we're just redefining how it's gonna look, basically.
I think it's a good start because you have to start like this.
Do you want direction, excuse me, Randy, or do you want a motion? Sorry.
Yeah, I think the board needs to take an action so we can get started on it, and put together a proposed budget format to bring back to you so we can get going on the budget. So we can do that for the next meeting. You bring that proposed format back to you, or send it out to you, basically, once those gets put together, and have you comment on it.
Trying to come up
Be ready to
with the
talk
way you
about it for the next
word a
meeting.
motion. How do we word that motion? To get us started.
Well, the motion would be to accept what was proposed as the format for the 2020 budget.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'd second.
We want to try and get that out to you certainly by the middle of September, the proposed budget, so you can start working on it.
And we've got a 3-week buy too, so that gives staff a little bit longer to look at it. Dave?
I think, most of this come out of the frustration of going through the last budget where nobody is talking. We refer to things that mean one thing to somebody and something totally different to somebody else. And if you don't have anything else, you need a piece of paper that tells you
Say,
what a fund is, what a department is.
We're gonna need a cheat
and what
sheet.
his account is.
yeah, it says,
When we're talking,
Yeah.
everybody's talking the same language.
it's like 3 or 4 word definitions, so it's quick and easy to grasp.
And the committed and assigned, it's right out of that 90-some page thing.
Best practices.
Yeah, that's right there.
Yeah, the best practices.
Okay. Nothing else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
So you're saving yourself, so that's why you're so quiet earlier, right?
I want to wear myself out.
No, it's good. Nice job.
Well, we lost our public, so we don't have to go there. Any announcements anybody has? Randy?
Election announcements. We'll have someone in the office on Saturday, August 3rd, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon to give out absentee or take in absentee or register you to vote. We have an election on August 6th. That's a one-item election for the Marquette County Care Facility. I don't foresee a big turnout with what absentee ballots are coming back, but that's what it is. You're going to see the term two in the future, not so much this year, but in the presidential year next year. Absentee voting is going to be re-imaged by the state to early voting because it's a no reason absentee anymore, so it's not really absentee. So you're going to see a lot of push for rebranding that to early voting. So don't be surprised to see that in the future.
Makes sense.
But the way they look, and if you do want to register on election day, you're allowed to do that. You have to register in the township office to vote, and then we will give you a receipt to go to whatever precinct you're registered in, and then we can process you through there. So they've kind of got the kinks out of registering people to vote on election day now, so. But other than that, we're moving forward with that.
Dave?
There was a discussion at the rec committee tonight, and we have some plaques that are ready to be installed over at Lions Field. We're going to install them the Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and the last of this month in preparation for community days. And the donors and everybody that took part in donating their time or funds for everything that was done over there is going to be contacted and let them know that those are going up. I just wondered if we couldn't work in some kind of a little announcement on community days and point everybody over towards them and let them know that they're over there and make some kind of a thank you to the donors. And
Make it a special time then, so anybody that wants to be there wouldn't miss it.
yeah, it's
Noon
getting
or
pretty
something.
close also.
So what are you gonna do the last of the month, 29th, 30th, 31st?
I'm going to install the signs, the actual
Oh,
plaques.
okay.
And the next board meeting is Wednesday, August 7th, due to the election on Tuesday, August 6th.
Which is actually after the community days.
It is.
Okay. Anything else for announcement-wise?
Lynn,
Sir.
when's the next road commission and township relations?
They usually let us know like a
Okay.
couple weeks in advance.
I don't know if I can make any more of them,
They've
but.
canceled quite a few because Jim was out of town,
Right,
remember?
exactly. But we're having a problem with some of our short sight intersections, overgrowth. A good example of, like, the trees are coming over the road on Cherry Street between Woodridge and Granite down there, it's getting bad. Woodridge, Brickyard Road and Northwoods Road. If you come on Brickyard to Northwoods, right, and you're looking at Menards, the traffic coming from Northwoods roads, it's like a Y, and it's a little bit dangerous. I know I'm gonna talk to him about, for the, Mark Tran, because we're getting complaints about how close calls there. And now with the additional traffic because of Fox and that, I think that the township and the county should take a look and maybe put it in their budget, start clearing out some of these intersections and that, so.
They do that, that's part of it, but maybe, I don't know why they haven't. We could have the manager get a hold of Jim or give him an
Yeah.
email and just kind of spark that.
Warner and Erickson looking to the east has grown in.
Quite a
And
bit.
the last time they cut that intersection was after an accident. So hopefully they'd be proactive and cut it before an accident, so they didn't have to.
Well,
do
that's why I'm
that.
bringing it up now, because I've been asking them for 2-3 years now, and they just don't have it in their budget, and they don't have time to do it and stuff like that. So I think if we start pushing them a little bit, they might do something. Or like Randy said, you have to wait for an accident to happen and stuff like that, so it's crazy.
Yeah, usually at those relations meetings, they ask, what are you looking for? They'll give an update. But get a hold of them, find out when their next meeting is.
Okay.
Anything else for announcements? Okay, we can review motions, Mr. Clerk.
Okay.
Manager report.
Oh,
Managers report.
Managers
Did I
report
pass
first.
that? I
Yeah.
crossed it off, yep, sorry. Go ahead, Randy.
It's quick. Everybody mark your calendars. August 3rd, Saturday, August 3rd is the Community Day at Lions Field. Trustee Wiegand already mentioned that. It's going to be 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Lots of activities for the kids, lots of activities for adults, a lot of music. Super One will be there all day and all night long, cooking food, brats, hot dogs, pop, chips, all that good community event type food. Softball games, terrific music. We've got music running all day long. If you want to take a look at the flyer, it is going to be up, it is up on our website, www.marquettetownship.org. Facebook page, just search Marquette Township UP on the Facebook, and you'll come to our page. It's got a full listing of all the activities, times. We have the 3 large bounce houses that we had last year. We'll be back again this year on the ice rink surface. So it'll be a great day for families, kids. Come on out and have a good time. Traffic issues, we still are having less than cooperative drivers coming through the construction zone in the corridor. Let me put it that way. The speed limit is 40. It is being enforced at 40. It is a construction zone, so if you get stopped, your ticket's going to be twice as high, and you're going to get twice as many points on your driver's license. And there's been a lot of tickets written. There will be a lot more. Be cautious. Don't be talking on your phone. We're still seeing people texting, driving through there. It's a congested area. Pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to what the other drivers are doing. And slow down. It only takes you a couple more seconds to get through if you slow down to 40. Please, if you're coming out of GFS or out of Lowe's, do not try and turn left out of the GFS driveway. Sight distance is almost non-existent and traffic is thick. Go to the traffic light. It's 15 seconds more to drive to the traffic light and turn on the left turn lane
Safe.
safely. So just those couple of comments. The last corridor committee meeting was on July 9th. Minutes are in your packet, basically, and then your next meeting will be on August 13th for the corridor committee. That's it.
Any questions for the manager?
I just got one comment for the manager that every year we sort of have a little bit of a struggle to supply the food for an event like this, and also for the last couple events that we've had with the Township Events Committee. And maybe it's not right, but I think I have to say it. We'll send him a letter in that, but the Super One is really the manager over there, Mike, and he stepped up, and I know what it takes to pull people, 8 to 10, 12 people out of a store. And they've been doing a banged up job for Christmas. And, I'd just like to say publicly, I want to thank them. So
Oh,
if
absolutely.
you're in there, just tell them, thank you very much for working our, plus they donate money to the township, so.
Yep, they're going to be there all day long on August 3rd for preparing food. So, all the way through the music, all the way through the night, right up until 10 o'clock, they'll be staffed. and
Because last year,
providing food.
the pizza, they pulled the pizzas early, and then people wanted something to eat, and they couldn't get anything to eat, so, it means a lot, to me anyways, that they stepped up and did that, so.
Ernie?
A couple things. One on the DDA, attended the Township Business Association today. Comment was they'd like to get more information on what's happening on the DDA and that. And is it possible to get a copy of the minutes when they come out, send to Frank, so he can get it to the members on the DDA?
Oh, sure, one of his staff is on the DDA, so, yeah, we can certainly do that.
I'm
Yep.
repeating what John.
Yeah,
Frank-
and where we're at right now is we're waiting for Parsons Brinkerhoff to get us back their proposal for the lighting study, lighting and pedestrian crossing design east of Commerce Drive.
And the other item was that came up on the events committee. They passed the motion to contribute $500 to events committee, but they need a letter.
They got it today, and we got the check today.
I just had the meeting with that noon.
You know how efficient he is?
We're quick. We're quick. We got an email that said they needed the letter. We got the letter off to them, and they came by and dropped off the check. So,
They
Just
weren't
like
my
that.
comments.
but thanks for bringing it up.
Should have been quiet for a while.
No, that's fine. Brought it up. It's got the air.
Okay, cool. Future agenda items. No, Randy. See, I'm writing too small here in all my stuff. Motions.
Okay, first motion was to approve the consent agenda as presented. It was a roll call vote because of the budget amendment. Second motion was to approve the agenda as amended as we moved the fire department item up. Third motion was to approve the increase in the special assessment for the fire department up to 2.8 mils, effective January 1, 2020. Fourth motion was to to approve the NTN non-exclusive trail license agreement as a draft and sent and forwarded on to them. Fifth motion was to approve the request for proposals for the future recruitment by the manager and have him send those out and advertise. Sixth motion was to accept the recommended fund types and definitions and incorporate them into the 2020 budget sessions, or budget format. And that is it.
Along those same lines, one of the things that was also mentioned, we spent quite a bit of time at the MTA conference talking about agendas. Would the board be interested or like or dislike having a recommended motion on the agenda? Would that be helpful? Does it matter? Is it a waste of time?
What do you mean recommended?
One of the
Like the
things
city
we're
does, I think,
Oh, do they?
on the city's agendas, if it's a staff report, as a for instance, it usually is ended with a recommended motion. And we do that on occasion.
Usually Public Works.
From staff from Public Works has a recommended motion. It's usually not on the agenda, though. It's usually in
They
a
said
communication.
Put it on the agenda.
Good.
So that the public knows what's being requested. Andrew and I have been trying to make whatever's on the agenda more clear, so the public looks at it and says, oh, hey, they're gonna be talking about blah, blah, I think I need to go see it, or make a phone call, or get the packet, or whatever. So if the actual motion is there, more often it'd be on the business side, not something we would be recommending, it'd be something coming from staff. Does that matter? Do you care?
It'd be pretty easy to do because she would have all that information when she puts the agenda together, so it wouldn't, it's gonna probably make your agenda be 3 pages.
I was gonna
but-
say it'd be longer, yeah.
Right.
And more work for someone to type it up,
Yeah.
not me.
We don't have to, I
Not
just
that-
thought I'd throw it
I
out.
mean, it's not that big of an issue. I mean, if the board wants to do that, we can put the proposed motions on the agenda as well, that tie to the items in the packet.
Or it could be on the packet, that
Either way.
might be easier to at least save some space.
I would think that I would be more comfortable with those in the, from a staff report attached to the packet.
Like the planning commission has.
Yeah, like the planning commission has it, as opposed to the agenda.
Well, and then plus on the clerk side of it, if the motion is written there, then it's easier to track with minutes too, probably.
He's got some pain going on. Are you
I don't-
kicking him, Randy?
I don't have a problem with it if they want to try to, guess we can try it. If it doesn't work, we can always go back to what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes we stumble and say, well, how does this need to be worded? What needs to be included? Did we put, the dollar number, whatever, contact, who signs it? Just
Well,
make it one
Basically,
less thing to worry about.
basically, we can look to our neighbors to the east. They do that already. All you'd have to do is steal their format. And it'd just be one page before the item, and then you'd have all the background behind it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they do for planning.
Staff reports, yeah.
The staff makes the recommendation at the bottom of that.
What the city got there is who's gonna make the motion, who's second, well, written of it. If you ever watch it.
That's the other thing they said, and we've talked about that before, you guys give me grief about letting you talk so much, or me talking, but they said, deliberate. The last thing you want to do is come to a meeting and say, okay, here's this, anybody want to make a motion? Okay, pass, goodbye. You can't do that. We have to deliberate.
I'm happy about it, I'm glad that we do that, so.
Okay, well, we'll try it. See how that works. Any other board member comment? Going once?
No items for future consideration, no,
Not
other
that-
than
not
try.
that I got.
Okay.
Going twice?
You don't wanna deliberate? Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second? I'll second.
I'll-
I haven't seconded in a while. What time is it?
8.
Aye.